So outside of the nature and the friendly people, I also found a country that was safe and looked after each other.
I hear a lot of people talk about, what about the danger in these other countries? Do you know what it's like living in America? Memphis, Chicago, Houston.
Up next, Mr.O. Be on grind, baby. Let's get it. Ay, 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 be on grind. Ay, 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 be on grind. Ay, 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 be on grind.
Wake up and grind, man. To all my haters, thank God for the win. You just got a second chance. Do something with it. Another video by a content creator called Matt Diavilla. I've never heard of him, but when I type in the search engine, I left the USA, his video populates immediately, first one up, and I wanted to see what he had to say. This video is 2 days old at the time of recording this. Let me get a cup of coffee and we're gonna get into this.
Shot the pot, straight drop, straight drop, straight drop.
All right, his video is titled, Why I Left America for Good. Let's see what he has to say.
So after living in the US for 35 years, I made the decision with my family to leave America for good. It was not a decision that was easy, but as time passed, it became clear that the US was no longer the right place for us. So I want to talk about why we left, the downsides of leaving America, and a lot of the benefits that we found as well. There were quite a few benefits. And because this is a channel about personal growth, I also want to talk about some of the lessons that I learned along the way that might help you to make really hard decisions and live a more meaningful life. My wife, Nat, and I met in New York over 10 years ago. She was on a one-year tourist visa from Australia, looking for a good time, and I was on all the dating apps looking for love.
So right away, he's 35, he's married, and he's considering moving. I think at the time of this video, he's already gone. It's not just single people leaving, families are leaving as well.
I don't think that we realize the implications of falling in love with someone who was born 10,000 miles away from you at the time, or how difficult of a life that would be, especially once you have kids. But at the time, we could give a shit less. So as things started to get more serious, we had to talk about where we wanted to settle down, where we wanted to start our family. New York definitely wasn't it. So we tried California and later Pennsylvania, but no matter where we lived, we couldn't find a place that felt like home. And after giving this a lot of thought, I think it really came down to having a lack of community. So I've got a big family. I've got 6 brothers and sisters, and we all spread out across the East Coast. Some of us even moved across the country. My friends from school followed a similar pattern. A couple of them still live in my hometown, but the vast majority of them moved more than 2 hours away.
That's something I hear a lot when you bring up the fact of moving out of the country. People are like, what about your family? What about this family member? The kids, this and that. You know, the reality is we aren't really seeing each other that often anyway. People ain't getting together every day, every weekend, every week, every month for that matter. We get together on holidays, maybe. Sometimes you go years without seeing family. What if this medical emergency happens? Like, what if the world ends? Like, it's always these scarcity tactics and conversations that people want to have with the what ifs. And the reality is we so spread out now here in America, me going across the water ain't really no difference. Your sense of community is who you build your everyday life around. Contrary to popular belief, you can build community abroad, and it's more likely that you will than you would here anyway. The dynamic of people and socialism, being able to be social with the people around you, it's more common than you think. And I find people abroad, especially in areas that we may find lower income, to be more humane and kind.
Everyone just became so spread out. And I think this is a universal experience for people who grew up in small towns in the US. Most people go off to college and find opportunities in bigger cities, and they rarely ever return. While there are real benefits to being within a few hours from your family and friends, I don't think that's the same thing as having a community. A community needs to be close in proximity. They're your actual neighbors. They're the people that you run into on your morning walk. They're the ones you call when you have to make a midnight trip to the emergency room. We really struggled to find any sense of community in the US. And that's not the fault of the US as much as it is the fact that all my family and friends that I grew up with just spread out so much. But what I learned from this process is that you're never really stuck and you can always start over. Honestly, I lost track of the amount of times that we started over. I think we sold all of our stuff and moved across the country 2 or 3 times. If you can avoid doing that, I think that's probably the way to go. You're gonna save a lot of money. But I also found out that this wasn't the scariest thing in the world, to be able to start over again and again, to experiment with where you want to live and what you are looking for your home, what you need out of a community. I think those are pursuits that are worth investing your time and energy into. And the more that you do it, the more that you start over, the more you begin to build up resilience and realize that you actually can begin again in a new place. And I think that's one of the reasons that made it so easy for us during the pandemic to spend a significant amount of time in Australia. So I visited Sydney for the first time over 10 years ago. This was very early into my relationship with Nat, and I immediately fell in love with the city. I mean, sure, there were some challenges in adjusting to the new culture.
Australia, the down under, down there on an island by itself. I'm not sure about that as far as economics or just culture. Australia may be closer to Western culture than you think. Maybe not. I don't know much about it, but it looks like it's a viable option for him. And I believe it may be more peaceful than what we're finding here on the everyday. Let's see what he has to say.
For one, everything was upside down. The toilet flushes the other way, but wow. Was this country beautiful? I mean, the hiking trails, the tiny beaches scattered all across the coast. The people were so friendly, and God damn it, their accents are adorable.
So beauty, serene, and people. Friendliness of the people. This matters tremendously when you're thinking about your everyday life. We're so separated and divided here. Everybody seems to be angry all the time. I don't know what it is, what's going on, but I need a peace of mind.
At the time, though, I never really considered it a real possibility for our future. Nat and I kind of had this unspoken agreement that since we met in the US, we would always live in the US. Whether that was fair or not, that was kind of the unwritten terms of our relationship. When the pandemic hit, it gave us an opportunity to live in Australia for 7 months. And for the first time, I really got to live there. I wasn't just visiting as a tourist. It gave me a taste of what life might be like if we stayed. And honestly, it was pretty great. I got a gym membership. I learned how to drive on the other side of the road. I learned that a flat white isn't a boring white person, which is a common mistake. So outside of the nature and the friendly people, I also found a country that was safe and looked after each other.
Safety, one of the biggest. America, very dangerous. I hear a lot of people talk about, what about the danger in these other countries? Do you know what it's like living in America? Memphis, Chicago, Houston. You know how dangerous it is here? You get used to the danger in your country and you think it's more dangerous somewhere else, when in actuality, if you look at the ranking, you can look up where the US ranks as far as safety, and we're way down on the totem pole. A lot of these countries that people are moving to, a lot higher up in safety. Australia makes sense for the reasons that he named, as far as safety, community, and a different pace of life, and the beauty of the scenery. Do some recon before you actually move. Go date some other countries for a while and engulf yourself into the new country. See how things work. Get the lay of the land. See what works for you. Take a month or two. COVID happened for him and his wife, and that's how they were able to decide this is somewhere they can see themselves living long term. But go do some recon. Check out these other countries and go try to live in them outside of vacation mode for a while to see if it makes sense for you. And I'm sure you'll find a place that resonates more with you. I'm gonna end the video right here. Check out Matt's video. Matt developed Why I Left America for Good. And let me know what you think. But that's my time. I'm Mr. O. And I'm just living. Stay smooth and keep it player. You did.